Hello, everyone. This is Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to This Week in Bitcoin. Today is January the 24th, 2020. Strong hand, golden age 2020s. Bitcoin is next Bitcoin. In motion, value your wealth in Bitcoin. I'm offended by selling. These dudes got conviction. Don't FOMO on altcoins. No one FOMOs on altcoins that's on this panel. We got David Bennett here. We got Gigi here. And we got Mauricio of Ledn here. And whoa, this has been quite a week in Bitcoin. All sorts of centralized players all over the place. People all not controlling their private key. It's wacky, but it's real. And we're going to have to address all the nonsense that's going on. Remember, new show here every Friday. All these guys are linked linked to below. Actually, new show here every day. This Week in Bitcoin is every Friday. Follow me at TechBalt, TECHBALT on Twitter. All these dudes' Twitters are below. Let's start off with Mauricio in lovely Toronto. I believe that's where you are right now. Coinbase, it's come about the news that Coinbase is going to soon have 1 million Bitcoin there. So many people use Coinbase and it's not all these exchanges have lots of Bitcoin. That was big news this week, or at least to me, it's big news. What is your take on that situation?
No, I think, obviously it's important that we pay attention to this. I think as Bitcoiners and as sort of participants in the community and the industry, we need to be cognizant of the fact that although we want to push this narrative of protecting your own wealth, having control of your own keys, there are a lot of users and people around the world that want to get access to Bitcoin, don't have the time to go through the whole learning curve, and they end up opting to using these centralized services. And in addition to that, these centralized services, even more so now, are starting to provide added benefits like interest accounts and loans, things you can do with the Bitcoin. So they give you extra, they dangle extra carrots, and not in the sense that these are all bad services, but in the way we see it is it's somewhat of an inevitability that some people will end up using custodial services. So rather than trying to get rid of them as a whole, I think it's important that we drive this idea of proof of reserves, which is the fact and the ability that is inherent to the Bitcoin protocol, where these custodians can show you on chain that they have your Bitcoin. And I see this as it's not necessarily a trivial advancement in the practices of custody today. There's a lot of work that has to be done in the back end, but this needs to be facilitated. We need to make more of an effort to basically push that this should be the standard.
All right. Well, we'll talk more about your article. You wrote a great article about proof of reserves. What do you think, though, about the news that also came out this week that the Winklevoss brothers over at Gemini, there's some insurance now they've come up with, Nakamoto insurance to protect. It encourages people to give them to let them have their Bitcoin. Is that a positive development?
Listen, I think it's a positive development for the adoption of Bitcoin in general. Why? Because it keeps giving Bitcoin a perception of safety around good, important players that are regulated in the markets they operate in. And the fact that they keep pushing the boundaries on the maximum coverage and then the items that are covered. So one of the interesting things that Gemini is now advertising is not only coverage of their cold wallet, they're now insured on their hot wallet, and they claim that they have pass-through FIDC insurance on their dollar deposits. So that starts giving a user that may be interested in Bitcoin but doesn't have the time to go through the whole curve. It gives them peace of mind, and it gives them more of a readiness to act on a potential buy.
All right, let's move over to Gigi. And by the way, everyone, pound that like button. And pound that like button if anyone was on Twitter today when I retweeted Gigi's German podcast. Yes, he's got a podcast in German. He speaks German. He knows about Germany. So actually, right before the show, we were talking about Germany and how banks now can hold people's Bitcoin for them. It hasn't exactly started there yet. But what Gigi, we all know you're a hardcore control your own private key guy. What do you think about these developments?
Yeah, well, in general, all those centralizing developments, I wouldn't be too worried about it yet. I mean, I think it will get worrying if Coinbase says they're getting close to 21 million Bitcoins. And I don't know. I think it will just continue to happen and people will get burned. And yeah, that's just the part of the Bitcoin experience, it seems, that you opt for a centralized service that holds your keys. And as we all know, not your keys, not really your Bitcoin. And then you get burned because the centralized service fails and you learn and you move forward and maybe you come back in with the next hype cycle. I don't know. I think it will just continue to happen. I think most users, they are still in the convenience mode, so they value convenience over anything else. And I think it will just be a learning experience for most users.
If Coinbase does end up with 1 million, that there's only 18 million Bitcoin that have ever been created. So 1 in every 18 at Coinbase. That just sounds it doesn't sound good to me. It sounds like Coinbase is going to be is incredibly powerful in the space. I'll tell you that. For all the people that predicted that Coinbase was going to fail, my lord, that doesn't sound like failure to me. David Bennett, what's your take
on centralization in general? Obviously, I don't like it. However, I got to agree with my colleagues here. This is going to happen. People are going to look for convenience. That's just the nature of how many humans operate. It took a lot for me mentally to get to a space where I was like, I got to learn all this stuff to be able to feel even remotely safe and in control of my destiny. And that's hard. That's a hard sell. It was easy for me because I don't like people being in control of what it is that I do and have all this say. But again, this is going to happen. The fact that they're going to end up with 1 million coin over at Coinbase, Coinbase is, it actually kind of is throwing me for a loop. I'm a little surprised, but I'm not. It's not outside the realm of possibility. And you're right; it makes them pretty powerful. I don't like it. I mean, the whole delete Coinbase thing. I'm done with them. I haven't done anything with Coinbase in over a year now, and I refuse to work with them at all. But we're here, and this thing with Gemini is sort of the same thing. Custody is going to happen, and you have to make the choice as to whether or not you're going to be one of the animals in the pen or one of the animals outside of the pen. I don't mean to make it sound so harsh, but these guys some of them are going to learn the hard way. Some of them are going to end up being safe, and it depends on the people that are backing the companies that decide to go custodial and remain custodial.
I think it's good to make it sound that harsh, actually, because it's better like sounding harsh now than feeling the wrath of the harshness when you lose your Bitcoin. There's, being called an animal inside a pen is better than losing 10 Bitcoin. I mean,
at least being outside the pen, if somebody comes after me with an axe, I got the choice to run. I can bail with my hardware wallet across a border. Baby. If I go across a border and I have to depend on Coinbase to say, by the way, you're in Iran, we're not doing business with you because you're in a region that is under, whatever consequences that any other state puts on them. I would rather be in control of. I just would rather be in control of my own stuff.
Yeah. So let's go back to Mauricio, because you did write the article on proof of reserves. That I know Nick Carter is a huge fan of proof of reserves. Is there anything else you wanted to say about it? I mean, right now, I don't think a lot of the participants in the ecosystem would be willing to do this right now for obvious reasons.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what I brought up in the article, is that this concept of proof of reserves, it's innate to the protocol since inception. Like it's fairly simple to show if somebody has sent you, Adam, coins on chain. It's very simple for you to show, hey, here's on chain, I received them. And in fact, even if you tell me you didn't receive them, I can go on chain and see that you did, because I can see that the transaction was validly received. So what I guess what I'm trying to highlight in the article is the fact that even though it is possible, because the technology enables it, for you, Adam, to show and see on-chain where your funds are in any custodial service, right? That ability, the protocol enables that. Why haven't we as an industry passed that through to the users? And why haven't we really, and we've created these all like confusing and complicated audit systems where you can check that your fund, you have to do all this work to check that your funds are included in the audit, and then you have to do additional work to see where everybody else's funds were. Why can't we just, as custodial services, show where the funds are to the users on chain? We do that with every one of our loans.
Well, the other, because I can see why some custodial services don't want to do it, because they're practicing a fractional reserve lending.
And that's the thing. Like, ask the question. If they can't answer it, what are you doing there?
Yeah, that's a good one, people. Hey, wait, Gigi, did you just have something to say? By the way, I thought I saw something pop up on my screen.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to comment on Mauricio's article because I really liked what he said about Bitcoin having very low switching costs, because I think that's very important to point out. Because I think once we have something that is approximating another Mt. Gox, like some grand disaster with some centralized service or an exchange, or even with fractional lending or some other shenanigans, and people are afraid that their centralized service that they use will do the same with their Bitcoin, they will just run to the gates and they will take care of setting up their own self-custody and maybe setting up a multisig or whatever is convenient and popular right then and there. And I think it's very important to point out that Bitcoin intrinsically has very, very low switching costs, as Mauricio put it. And don't underestimate that. I mean, we've seen that in the digital realm a couple of times, that services simply die in the span of like a week or a month. Just look at dig.com, for example. I mean, it got killed off by Reddit in a couple of weeks or months, and the same with MySpace and other services that just went by the wayside. And I think the same will be true for centralized services in the Bitcoin world if they mess up and if they play games with their users' funds.
100%.
Yeah, well, imagine. I'm just imagining a nightmare situation, God forbid, where at Coinbase, where Coinbase is going to have 1 out of every 18 Bitcoin. If they got hacked, that would be big, and there'd be a lot of people switching suddenly at that point. That
yeah,
people, we've lived through hacks before.
It would be a great sacrifice.
We've lived through hacks before. I just want everyone to realize if.
Sorry.
I didn't hear what you said there.
Sorry for interrupting, but
no. Turn your volume a little bit.
It would be interesting because there are a couple of million Bitcoins already lost, supposedly. There are some that are provably lost, but it would be interesting to see what would happen if like Coinbase goes bust and 1 million Bitcoins are lost. It would make everyone's Bitcoin much more valuable, and it would be a great sacrifice to the Bitcoin world. So I'm not necessarily seeing it as a great disaster.
Well, the first thing that would happen though is there would be the mass media would say Bitcoin was hacked, and the price would drop considerably if Coinbase were to go down. I mean, living through 2016, we're seeing the Bitfinex hack. Every time there was a hack, it would go down like 20% or more the price. So this would be nightmarish. But let it not happen. It would be quite a lesson. But everybody, that's why you first of all control your own private key, and you don't get too freaked out by fiat prices jumping around, because there's some more roller coaster conditions on the horizon. Who knows what will bring about those roller coaster conditions. All right, well, on the topic of centralization there, unless, David, do you have anything to say about proof of reserves or anything else on this topic?
Yeah, I was just gonna add that.
You good? All right.
Are you there?
Yeah.
Proof of reserves.
Yeah.
Is good. It's good. My issue is, because I'm trying to think adversarially, is proof of reserves work until they don't, insofar as, let's say I have a custodial company and I am really good with my audits, and I'm always sending out the audit, and everybody goes, "Oh yeah, he's got my coins, he's got my coins, he's got my coins," and then boom, exit scam, and I did it before the next audit. I think if we were to look at this, this might be where the whole Gemini story comes back in to play its part. But my thing with the Gemini story is I don't know who the company is that is holding the money for Gemini, because if they're self-insured and they allow audits, then the insurance could go away as well as all the Bitcoin can go away, and there's not any kind of proof of reserve that's going to stop that from happening from audit date number 1 to audit date number 2. Now, and I hate this because it's more centralization, but if a quote unquote trusted third party insurance company is insuring Gemini, then if for whatever reason their proof of reserves goes kaput and the Winklevoss decide to take a poof, then a third party's on the hook for that insurance. So I think they would work in concert. But again, if you're self-insuring, the proof of reserves, I don't know. It's one of those things where, yes, it's a good idea to have the proof of reserves. It just, I can't help but to think adversarially, because humans have this weird tendency to screw each other, like we've seen lately with the second Lightning trust chain torch.
Oh,
see what I'm saying?
Good, interesting comparison there. Oh wait, Gigi, you said something?
No, I just
All right.
thought the comparison was
we
fun.
got a question here. We got a question from the audience. This is an interesting one. This one might be from Mauricio. Will the upcoming Schnorr signatures soft fork create any difficulties for proof of reserves? Well, we don't even know when that's going to happen. I mean, you say upcoming, that's who knows when that's going to happen. But yeah, what would that do as Bitcoin becomes more private or more fungible? What's that deal? What's the deal with proof of reserves when that happens?
I mean, listen, I think proof of reserves as a concept, I think right now what the industry is kind of trying to wrestle with is, what does this look like? What is the standard, and what is the right way to show proof of reserves? Because, to the point that was just made, the audit is periodic. It's not real time. So there's a period in time when something can happen. The way we address that ability to show our users real-time proof of reserves is we assign a vault for their collateral, and they can basically ping that vault at any time with their node or a third-party block explorer, and the second that Bitcoin moves, they'll know. Now, again, it's not perfect. There are different ways that this can be structured, but to us, as long as responsible users verify the vault, they will be the first ones to know when that thing moves, and at least they'll be able to set up triggers and act, and not have to wait till the next audit comes out.
All right, we've talked about this subject, and now it's time to move on to something even more centralized. Well, some would say it's. So let's talk about these centralized coins. I guess we'll start out with David. I think you were tweeting a lot about this this week, right? Or you wanted to talk about this. The Bcash, 12.5% tax. Tell us what's going on with Bcash. It's a learning experience.
Well, yeah, it looks like what happened was a blog post dropped. I cannot pronounce the gentleman's name. He's from btc.top, one of the big larger mining pools. Schnorr, I think is the name, on January 22nd. He drops this outline for the infrastructure funding plan for Bitcoin Cash. Essentially, I won't get into anything other than 2 points. One is that it suggests a 12.5% tax on the miners, and that tax will then go to a corporation that will then be distributed to the developers, and that's about all we know. For me, well, I don't have to worry about this happening in actual Bitcoin. So it doesn't bug me because it doesn't affect me. Any BCH bag holders, though, this is going to cause a problem. And normally speaking, like in all my podcasts, I don't ever make predictions. Certainly, I never make them on price because I'm a crappy TA guy. I am going to make a prediction on this one, though. This thing is supposed to drop, or this thing is supposed to happen on May the 15th, as far as they're talking about, close to the happening. When that happens, I suspect that on that day, there will be only one major fork of the Bcash chain. After that time, I believe there will be several more forks of BCH, because what's going on here is that now miners are being forced to fork over some of their profits, if that's what you want to call it here, or revenue, definitely, from the mining BCH, to pay some people to work on BCH. This is what here's the top highlight of that blog post. It says, quote, "To ensure participation and include subsidization from the whole pool of SHA-256 mining, miners will orphan BCH blocks that do not follow the plan. This is needed to avoid a tragedy of the commons," which is Roger Ver's favorite argument ever, is the tragedy of the commons. More to the point, though, to ensure participation, they spelled compliance wrong. This isn't participation. This is force. This is violence by force, just like tax. It has the same impact. It's going to do the same thing, except nobody's bound by law and will be thrown in jail if they decide to give somebody or several people the finger and, like the free animal in the field, go off on their merry way. And I think that that's what's going to happen, because none of these people are going to like this. Second, and this will be the last thing that I talk about, is this part here where he does math. What is it? Oh, he does math here by saying, and Roger Ver made a tweet either last night or sometime early this morning that says that Bitcoin BTC is going to pay for 95% of protocol development on BCH. This is where he's getting this from. Quote, "Because of the hash ratio between BTC and BCH and the difficulty adjustments that maintain an equilibrium, it is the entire set of SHA-256 mining, including BTC mining, that bears the cost under this plan." Now I'm not going to read the rest of it because it goes through a lot of percentage math, but my take on it is that it's gibberish, so that when somebody gives them a retort and says, "No, dude, no, this is BS and it's never going to happen," they will say the following: "Because you can't do math, this conversation is over. The math is confusing and it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's gibberish, and all I see is a complete and total fragmentation of Bcash. That's it."
Dude, pound that like button. I read through that math a few times. I'm like, where is it? Am I missing something here? Like, how's Bitcoin going to end up paying for this? And I just didn't say anything. I'm like, let them say whatever they want to. But I think you're onto something with that gibberish. Just like say a bunch of gibberish. It sounds kind of complicated. You don't understand the math. This is going to work. Believe us. We're centralized.
Yeah, that's
good. We're going to learn. This is, again, we can learn from these altcoins. Let them experiment in this new form of governance. Let's see how it works. As for your prediction that there are going to be many Bcashes afterwards, well, wouldn't they just mine Bitcoin instead? I mean, instead of making their own new Bcash. I thought about that too, that they might end up with some more Bcashes after this. But then I thought, why take it to that level? Why not just go back to the original if you're a miner and just mine Bitcoin instead of trying to mine your own Bcash? But who knows what will happen? Gigi, oh, sorry. Did you something else say, David?
No, go ahead, Gigi.
I just wanted to point out
Gigi.
again that what you read, the quote, I just found it hilarious that the reason why all this is done is for the greater good. Just believe us. We need to do this because we need to avoid this tragedy of the commons. And everyone who reads this and thinks that this is correct, just think about other projects that don't have this problem. Like why does Bitcoin not have a tragedy of the common in that same way? And I think, I mean, we talked about that a lot already now. I think, all the time spent on shitcoins like Bcash is more or less wasted time. It's just a little bit hilarious. That's it. It's, cheap entertainment for Bitcoiners. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, it's definitely a soap opera if you want a soap opera over there. But it's a learning experience. They're experimenting. We will see how this works, and we'll see their magical math. What comes out from that? Mauricio, do you have thoughts on this?
I mean, David and Gigi just covered it really well. But the only thing I would say is, as far as like experimenting and letting them go on the basis of experimentation, it's just the same way as seeing the government of Venezuela experiment with communism. It's like, it's an experiment that we've seen over and over and over, and that we just know how it ends. And frankly, I personally can't see the day until all this noise is finally drowned out, because you'd be surprised at how many people find an interest for Bitcoin and then get derailed with all this noise that they find and all these different types of Bitcoins. And frankly, I can't see the day where we just have one Bitcoin, the real Bitcoin, and everyone else is just kind of putting their resources to better uses rather than confusing people that rightfully are looking for sovereign money.
I agree that it's a bunch of noise, but I don't see that noise going away anytime soon. I think we're always going to have noisemakers distracting people, and many, many people will keep on falling for the noise. I mean, the situation, this is a noisy situation. It's nothing compared to the craziness that's going over at BSV, and there's plenty of people that buy that hook, line, and sinker. I mean, so I think it's something we're going to have to get used to in the space, and those of us who have the focus are going to remain focused, and unfortunately, a lot of people are going to get distracted by this noise. It would be great if there was some sort of noise. Now, so I might as well stick with you on Venezuela. The Cointelegraph article, and again, is about the petro, and that the petro on local Bitcoins is selling for half of the official price. Now, that might not sound great, but it does mean that people are putting value behind the petro. People are giving up Bitcoin for the petro. It might not be as much as the Venezuelan government sets it to be, but it's being traded. So I gotta say, from my point of view, I don't like the Venezuelan government, but it seems like the petro has definitely bought them some time. It has more value than the freaking Boulevard does. Boulevard has no value whatsoever. So what's your take on the situation over there, Mauricio?
Yeah, I'm just trying to organize my thoughts because there's a lot to unpack, and I want to be as clear as I can and try to get the message across. So the Venezuelan petro is being printed out of thin air, backed by nothing, not on a blockchain. It is not a crypto asset. It is just another inorganic fiat currency represented by a digital token that the governments can just print out of thin air, and they're giving it to people because when they printed bolívares, people knew what to do. Now, when you give them something new, inflation has not skyrocketed on this petro because people don't know what to do, and it's illegal to do so. So I don't know if you know this, but right now there are people. So the only way you can get rid of a petro is by selling it in a second market exchange or directly to the government. The government is only going to buy it to you from you in bolívares. And the reason they can maintain the dollar value of the petro in bolívares is because they can print as many bolívares as they can to defend that peg, right? When you take the petro to the real market and you ask a real person to do it, the only reason people are paying half the money for the petro is because there's this giant government forced plan to make retailers take the petro at the government value. So what are these people doing? These people are buying petro at 50 cents on the dollar and are taking the petro and buying a full dollar worth of chicken at the retailer. It's merely speculation, and the government is desperately trying for somebody to pay hard currency for the petro. Hard currency being dollars or Bitcoin. The last trick it tried to pull was trying to force airlines to pay for their refueling in the Venezuelan airports in petros. So essentially, nobody locally is going to give up hard money for petros. And the ones who do are doing it at a crazy 50% so they can go speculate. But no sane human with hard money is going to trade it for that thing.
But again, there are people that are doing it. So that if I was in Venezuela now, I would if I got some of those free petros, I would turn that into Bitcoin. If some sucker wants to turn that into Bitcoin, then this is a way out for some people. I mean,
it's always about 100%. It's always about being the greatest sucker. Right now, the greatest sucker is the retailer that's having to take full value on it because it's getting other subsidies from the government. So they are thinking that every petro they get, they're going to be able to get full value from the government, and that ball is going to drop like a hammer one day. And essentially, it's the same thing that's happened in Venezuela for years and years and years is going to happen again. They're going to wake up one day. They're going to realize they've been lied to for the last 6 months. Everyone's going to try to take their money out. Inflation shoots another 1,000%.
When you mentioned the forcing airlines, do you think they are going to force some outsiders, outside countries, to actually buy the petro? I think it's possible. I mean,
it's possible only for the people that Venezuela is already feeding. So, for example, airlines get a huge chunk of business because Venezuelan airlines are depleted. And the only way Venezuelans leave the country now is through foreign airlines. And now, because they can charge for their tickets in dollars, it is good business for airlines to fly Venezuelans out of the country. So yes, they'll be paying, they'll start paying X amount for the petro because they're getting way more than what it's costing them. Same with like the few transnationals, perhaps Chinese and Russian companies that are in there exploiting oil fields, etc. They might buy it because it kind of goes with the whole narrative. But I think the only people that are going to buy this are accomplices and people that are benefiting from the destruction of Venezuela one way or another. And that to me is just a whole set of bad actors.
Yeah, so if China is silly enough to do this, to buy some of it, and people are still getting it for free, and those people could turn it into Bitcoin, then it's a blessing that they could turn something into Bitcoin if they do it that way. It will help preserve their wealth. And this could, in the long run, it could hurt Venezuela, the government. It could bring down the government if more and more people thought long term and said, "Hey, wait a second, this is going to turn into nonsense. Let me turn it into Bitcoin now." I don't know if enough people will. People, you said buy chicken with it. I think there'll probably be more people buying chicken with it than thinking long term. But still, I see it as, I don't like the Venezuelan government. I agree that it is. Everyone that I've talked to says the same thing. It's not a cryptocurrency. It is not a cryptocurrency at all. It's centrally controlled. They can turn it off, et cetera, et cetera. But if you could turn it into Bitcoin, then you're in great shape, man, if you got the Bitcoin. So it's very interesting to see how it develops, and if any other regimes out there try to copy them.
You bet it's coming, because it's people don't understand, generally speaking, where inflation comes from. And the few that do know how to act and front run the inflation so they can move their dollars out before the big moves happen. What's going to happen with the petro is that because it's a brand new way to inject inflation, the market still doesn't really understand how to do it. So people are going to use this confusion, and other countries are going to try to finance their socialist bankrolls with these inorganic tokens. But sooner than later, people are going to realize that it's just like printing liras or bolivares, and they're going to stop using it.
All right. So obviously their central bank is making up this totally nonsense coin, but there are other central banks, big ones, that are clearly going to have real digital currencies, although they are going to be centralized also, but they won't be nonsense like what's going on in Venezuela. There's been a lot of talk, and I linked to below this week, Supposedly, different central banks are talking to one another about how they're going to do this, and Japan says they want to do it. I mean, we've been hearing it for a while. It's just a matter of time before a major country has its own Fed coin. Okay, it's a matter of time, and it'll be run differently than the Venezuelan one. I would think, at least. Gigi, your thoughts on centralized Fed coins? And maybe on the Venezuela situation too, if you have any.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting development, and I also want to point out that the people in Venezuela, they actually it was pointed out in the article that they want to use something that they can actually use, because I thought it was interesting that the app which actually allowed you to use the Petro coin was shut down quite quickly, and now you can't use it anymore, and people actually want the Bolivar again, pretty much. And I think the government shitcoinery, it will continue, and the poorer countries, I think, will front run the shitcoin movement. But we see it all over the world, and we see also the digital dollar initiative, and we see also from the European Central Bank initiatives to launch their own government-based shitcoins. And well, it's just something we will have to live with, I guess. And I think Bitcoin will weather this storm as well, and we will see how things are looking in the next couple of years.
You said something very interesting. You think the smaller countries will do it first. Well, Venezuela already did it. We'll do Fed coins before the larger ones. Or did I misinterpret you on that?
Yeah, no, I think because it's just easier to do and easier to coordinate if you are a smaller and more totalitarian country. I think the European Union, for example, moves way slower, and also the United States has just more responsibility to do things more or less in their point of view correctly. And if you just can disregard everything and disregard the law and are a smaller country to begin with, I think it's just easier to introduce something like that and easier to coordinate.
OPSEC Classified in the chat sent $1. Thank you, dude, for the support. David Bennett, what's your take on Venezuela and these centralized Fed coins?
I can't really say anything about Venezuela because I've never been there. I only get the news that everybody else gets, so I'll refrain from saying anything other than people still think that Venezuela is backing the petro by oil, and that's really, I mean, Mauricio's right. It's backed by nothing is the reality. What they say is it's backed by oil, and then what they'll do is they'll point to, look at our oil reserves. Now, those oil reserves are there, and they are large. The problem is the oil itself is really heavy. It's hard to get out of the ground. It's not like Brent North Sea crude or West Texas light sweet crude. The reason you like those oils is because they're easier to extract. This stuff is like gravy, okay? And it's way deep, and they don't have the drilling infrastructure anymore to actually tap it. So this entire thing has been a smoke and mirror show because they have one piece of evidence that is true. We have massive oil reserves. They don't talk about the quality of the oil. They won't talk about how expensive it is to get that oil. And then they've turned around and forced somebody, the Venezuelan state-controlled drilling and exploration company, I can't remember the name of it, to force them to sell 45 million barrels of oil that had already been extracted. As that's already above ground, that was easy to do. And I don't know, man, this whole thing of the petro being sold, people actually, like this guy saying, I'm reading the news story that we were referencing, that he's selling his BTC to purchase petro so that he can help exchange with other people. And I'm like, you just lost your Bitcoin.
Right.
And that's just, and this is all based on this smoke and mirrors about the reserves that are in the ground, that you'd have to hire somebody from the US to go do that, and or somebody else who really knows how to drill and really knows how to extract. This is not easy stuff to do. It's not You don't punch a hole in the ground and then it just starts gushing out. So now, as far as the other nation states, I've talked about this on Bitcoin and for a while. Nation state crap coinery is going to pick up steam. The front running of what they see as the ability to do an end around on Bitcoin is going to be their fatal error, because it's going to put them into really bad situations, and their people are going to get into really bad situations. And the only thing it's going to front run is altcoins, ICOs, the new IEOs. That's the only thing that it's going to do, while Bitcoin is way out ahead. I think from that standpoint, and only that standpoint, it's kind of good news, because the only people that are going to be touched by this are going to be everybody that's already in our wake. But I feel bad for the people of these countries that are going to have to deal with the fallout of the folly of their respective governments, who don't understand what this stuff is. They don't get it yet. And I don't know if they have a hope in hell of actually becoming competent.
Well, this is the thing. People have a choice to make, to see if they've got to do some education here. Okay, they can become hooked on their very easy to use Fed coin. Oh, look, I can buy anything with it. Look how quick transactions. Or they could be like, hey, I've gotten this for free, and I can turn this into Bitcoin, and I can get out of this system. I think there are going to be some people, it's going to be a minority, a small minority, probably 20% or so or less, that are going to realize, like, wait a second, I'm getting this Fed coin. I can now enter the Bitcoin realm really easy. I think some people will use it as an opportunity, but some will get stuck in a matrix that they will not be happy about. And some will get stuck in a matrix that they will be happy about. They'll just, just everyday life, whatever, getting taxed through their government. They don't care if they're automatically taxed through their centralized digital coin. But it's more of these countries are going to give free samples out of their digital coin. And if you're getting that for free, dude, turn it into Bitcoin. I mean, if someone wants to give you Bitcoin for it, my Lord, what an opportunity! What an opportunity! So that's I always try to have a positive spin on this. But over the long run, these digital coins, centralized digital coins of countries, they won't compare to Bitcoin at all, because they'll be totally KYC coins. They'll be able to turn you off. They'll be able to monitor everything you do. They'll be able to automatically tax you. It's ridiculous. It's 1984 type stuff, but it's convenient for some people. Whatever. All right. If anyone has, I think that's enough of the centralized coins. We talked about Venezuela, Bcash, central bank coins. Let's move on to something more positive. But some people would say this is centralized. Lightning Development Kit. All right. So the dudes over at Square, Jack Dorsey, have created a group, and they're going to try to make basically Lightning Network more usable. They have some pretty big goals, and to bring it in a way to the general public that'll be more convenient for them. And one of the suggestions that Lightning Development Kit wants to do is make wallets that already exist have Lightning functionality instead of having a separate Lightning wallet. I thought that was pretty cool. But Gigi, what's your thoughts, or do you have any thoughts on the Lightning Development Kit news?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that it's already less centralized than all the other stuff we talked about before, because Async, Blockstream, Lightning Labs, and multiple open source developers are going to work on this stuff. So I would say it's in good hand, and it's a good initiative, and it's definitely something like that is definitely needed. And as they pointed out, and I think we can all agree, there still needs to be some improvements done to UX, security, privacy, and scaling all around. And I think every effort in that direction is a good thing. And as they pointed out in their blog post, as you said, Adam, they want to add the ability with this Lightning Development Kit to integrate Lightning capabilities to existing Bitcoin wallets, and this will be very interesting to see because it should make the development of just additional Lightning wallets and additional Lightning capability way easier. And another thing that I thought was really interesting is that they want to support multi-device and multi-app access to the same single wallet pretty much out of the box with this development kit. And this will be very interesting to see as well how developers in the ecosystem use that and play around with it.
Yes, very good points there. Bringing up that second one that I hadn't really went into on my previous show. Mauricio, your thoughts on this project?
Yeah, man. I mean, listen, I'm a big fan of Jack and what he's been doing, like his initiative for the open source kind of framework for social media. Now he's going out and released this, Lightning development toolkit that's going to do wonders for the community. Reading the blog post, you kind of read. They really kind of analyzed the ecosystem and they saw where the gaps for funding were and what could have the biggest effect to move the community forward. We work very closely with people in LATAM. Their transactions are very, very small relative to US transactions. To give you an idea, like the average deposit from Venezuela into our savings account is $120. So people really need solutions to spend Bitcoin in smaller amounts and have more privacy and less fees. So I do think he kind of hits the nail on the head. I also think it's very interesting how he walks this line of helping open source, yet securing patents. I don't know if you saw the news, but they secured a patent for crypto to fiat on-ramp. So they're clearly walking both lines, and they're seeing, okay, I can't really grow my business on Bitcoin without growing Bitcoin. So they're trying. I love their model of just essentially prawning out to the community and prawning out to the private development of yourself as a company.
Excellent. David, your thoughts on this?
I'm generally really bullish on anything with Lightning, quite frankly. I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with Jack. I kind of agree with what Mauricio was saying. I dig the fact that he's doing what he's doing. I'm actually from a Jack-centric standpoint, I'm actually more interested in what he was trying to say with the decentralized social media thing, because I'd like to get a picture painted of what that actually looks like, because he didn't give us anything. But somehow or another, with all this floating around with Jack, the patent that he took that may or may not be defensive, I hope it's defensive, the decentralized social media stuff, and this Lightning developers kit, plus other funding of Bitcoin in his world, I could see that coalescing into something pretty powerful. I could also see it coalescing into something that kind of falls apart if it's done wrong. But I don't know, man. Jack kind of has a tendency to do things right. I mean, he's not living out of a box under a bridge. So whatever he's doing, keep on. But there's that decentralized social media, a decentralized payment platform, one that has like insanely low fees for now, because that whole low fees thing was a narrative that was fed to us at the beginning of this entire experiment. It's kind of screwed some things up because block space is going to be precious. Lightning transactions may end up being kind of precious, and a third layer might actually have to come into play there. I don't know, but I like the direction that Jack's going. I really do. I wish that the statement that said that they had talked to wallet developers would have read something like, we've talked to wallet developers and a whole bunch of Lightning Network users. I would have liked to see the LN users be in that statement, but yeah, it is what it is. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but that wasn't what I read in the particular piece we were talking about. I don't know. I think it's all good. I think it's bullish personally. So
yeah, I agree that it is good news, and it's a big undertaking, definitely. Your comment about the decentralized social media, yeah, I had the same thoughts. Like, what exactly are you talking about, dude? And it's kind of vague, and a lot of people were getting very gung ho about it. But like, I'd like more substance to that. But that's a whole nother a whole nother subject matter, though. But I am glad you brought it up. And yeah, to have Jack Dorsey on the Bitcoin team, as it were, it's positive. It's positive. In the long run, who knows? If we're watching this in 5 years, we probably got a big smile on our face. But by then, we'll know what he contributed, and I'm sure it'll be awesome. Maybe Bitcoin will be totally, or Lightning Network will be totally intertwined with Twitter. That would be kind of cool there. All right, we're getting to closing statements here. We're at the end. Let me real quick. We were talking about the petro being backed by oil, and I think that is nonsense. How is it even provable? Tether comes out this week saying they've got Tether Gold. It's backed by gold. Do any of you guys have thoughts on that, or is that just a gimmick? I thought it was a cool gimmick to get Peter Schiff people excited. I don't know.
Honestly,
anyone on Tether Gold? Does anyone have any?
Honestly, man, I actually
thought
it was a troll. I thought it was a troll. I really did. And now that it seems to be confirmed that this is a real thing, all I can really do is kind of laugh. And that's all I have to say about it. Okay.
Mauricio, anything about having coins backed by things that exist in reality? Any thoughts on that?
No, this is just more a general note on how to spot crap coinery. So at a government level, so I'll kind of give some details too, because we had a comment that the petro was backed by oil. So the first version of the white paper, so there's different legal documents that back the petro. There was a white paper, and then there was like a CETA, which is a publication of a law in Venezuela. The actual law that backs the petro says that the petro is backed by, quote, a barrel of oil, X amount of gold, X amount of diamonds, or, and this is where the key part goes, any other commodity that the government of Venezuela deems fit at the time.
God.
So not only that, but there were two versions of the white paper. In the first version, they actually signal out an oil field and listed the reserves. On the second version, they don't. And they put in this line about any other commodity. So you can spot these things. And same as if you go through the legal documents of Tether Gold or Tether this, like all it takes is a guy that reads the fine print. And they'll tell you to your face that they're lying to you. But you just have to go and read it.
Good. I like that. Good point. Read the fine print, people. All right, Gigi, do you have any thoughts on all this, or any closing? Anything you wanted to add? Any subject matters that weren't brought up?
Well, my only thoughts are that if you're like Peter Schiff and you're really in love with gold, just get some gold. Don't get a gold shitcoin, because the Oracle problem is still unsolved, and just get the real thing and put it under your mattress or something and bring it out from time to time to help you fall back to sleep, like Peter Schiff does it. But other than that, I don't have any comments.
That is actually a great. Pound that like button, team. That was a good one. Yeah, instead of Tether Gold, just get some real gold, put it under your pillow, and make a wish, I guess. All right, David Bennett. Actually, Dave, you wanted to bring up something that Aaron von Weirdum just published. Hang on, yesterday, I believe. PaySwap. Yeah. I hadn't read this yet. What's up with this PaySwap thing?
Yeah, I won't. Clearly, I won't read the whole thing, but the gist of it seems to be that it is a privacy solution, or not a solution, not the solution, a solution. This is going to be a field of solutions for this kind of stuff. But privacy is a big problem in Bitcoin, and mostly according to whoever it is you're talking to. But in either event, if there is a problem, there's always somebody that's got some kind of answer. And this gentleman who goes by the handle, get this, ZMNSCPXJ. I love the aliases in this space, man. He is introducing what he calls PaySwap. And apparently the gist of it is this. If I send you, like you say, like you've got, I don't know, something that I want, and I pay you for it in Bitcoin, chances are good I'm not being able to select a UTXO with the exact amount you're requesting, which means change is going to come back to my wallet. That transaction kind of seals our relationship if they know our wallets. What this does is, instead of that one transaction that results in me sending you Bitcoin and change coming back to me, it splits it up into 2 transactions. One where the only thing that an analytics firm can see is something from a wallet, my wallet, going to you. There's no change. That change apparently is addressed in a second transaction that goes from you back to me. And apparently in the analytics world, that is enough to cause enough of an obfuscation or dust storm that kind of hides our relationship. It may be where, like, since change came back, the assumption is something occurred here. Whereas if no change comes back, I might have just moved coins from one cold card wallet to another cold card wallet because I moved the whole amount and no change was needed. The pay swap at the end of it, it takes one single transaction between 2 unique individuals, turns it into 2 transactions that makes it look like almost nothing. It's called pay swap. Aaron von Weirdum wrote this for Bitcoin Magazine, January the 23rd. The name of the headline of the article is "How PaySwap Can Confuse Blockchain Analysis, Benefiting Bitcoin Privacy for All." So go read it. It's kind of fascinating.
And the guy who made it up is the guy with all the letters in his name. What's it? ZW? What's his?
Yeah, ZMN, old ZMN SCPXJ. Can't wait to buy that gentleman a beer. Yeah, it was proposed.
No, I've heard of that.
I was just going to say it was proposed on the Bitcoin Dev mailing list this week.
Yeah, well, I've heard of that dude before. People tweeted about him before. He gets paid in Bitcoin, and nobody knows who he is. That's the world we're living in today. That's awesome. All right,
beautiful.
Mauricio, you got some closing thoughts, I guess. Talk about Ledn, your company. What's going on up in Toronto and everything.
Yeah, no, listen, we like I said, we wear transparency on our sleeves. Our whole loan product is built on real temporal reserves. So I think that's why people like our service and one of the big drivers. But yeah, I'm the co-founder of Ledn. We're a Bitcoin company that lets you make the most of your Bitcoin. We have savings accounts where you can earn interest. We have a Bitcoin-backed loans where you can look at where your Bitcoin's sitting in cold storage, insured with BitGo, and we can give you dollars. And then the last one is B2X. So that's a product that lets you double the Bitcoin you have through a dollar loan. And essentially, it's just a quick way for using your Bitcoin to buy more. So that's what we do. We're based in Toronto, and me being Venezuelan, we have a lot of users from LATAM. Everything's in Spanish. So yeah, I'll stop there. But yeah, Ledn.io.
Dude, well, hey, man, I look people creating companies in this space. You're in motion. You're doing good up there. And Toronto community is getting bigger and bigger, right, man?
It is, man. We got Blockchain Week coming. Going down to party coming in April.
April. When is it in April? You got a little cut off there. Oh.
I have to check the exact day. I believe it's about. I'll say it in the show, but they're officially coming out soon.
All right. Yeah, now you're getting a little cut off. We've obviously reached the end of the show here. But thank you, Mauricio, for being on today. I really appreciate it. You're awesome. You rock. Let's move to Gigi. You do a German language show. Anything you want to say about that? Any promo you want to give?
Yeah, well, I'm probably most well known for writing the 21 lessons, which just came out a month ago in book form. So if you want to support me, the best thing you can do probably is buy the book on Amazon. I'm currently in the process of also setting up a BTC Pay server, so you can part with your precious sats to get the book as well. You can also read it online. All my stuff is published under a Creative Commons license, so you can do with it what you want, and it's 21lessons.com. I published some other articles on their Gigi.com. I most recently wrote for the Bitcoin Times. Amber in Australia is behind it. I also wrote some articles for Bull Bitcoin in Canada. I curate Bitcoin stuff on bitcoinresources.com. And as you said, I recently started a German-speaking podcast with a couple of friends where we talk about Bitcoin and sometimes also talk trash about shitcoins. And that's it. You can check that out on Twitter. I'm there, Gigi, on Twitter, and all the stuff is linked there.
Yeah, and all of these guys' Twitters are linked below, and that's really a great place to get started with them, because from their Twitters, they link to all the stuff that they've talked about. And Gigi just dropped some names that have been on the show. You mentioned Svetsky's publication down in Australia. You mentioned Francis, who's obviously been on the show before with Bull Bitcoin. And yeah, man, it's a small world, but hey, best guest in the space here, baby. I bring it to you every Friday. Okay, David Bennett, you're gonna tie it up here. Talk about your podcast, obviously, and what's going on with you.
Bitcoin and has been going on. I just passed, I'm about to drop episode 186 after I get done here. Generally speaking, if you want to stay up with the news, I try to find and filter the best news between the night before I do the show and the morning that I do the show, so that people can drive to work and be current without having to read and get into an automobile accident. And every once in a while, I will send things along the way. Like today, I'm talking about terra preta soils, because everybody is wetting their pants in the Bitcoin space all of a sudden. Over the last 2 days, I've seen more climate change tweets from people than I've ever seen before in my life. And it doesn't matter whether you're for or against or believe or don't. That's not the point. The point is that there's a lot of people that they kind of cry and they don't do anything about it. And there's something that can be done to make you feel better, at least. And terra preta soils is one of the ways that carbon gets sequestered into the soil for over 1,000 years. I talk about, I'm starting a series, not a series of that, but over the next few shows, I'm going to be getting into biochar and some possible even entrance in how it can possibly even work with Bitcoin mining, because its production causes an awful lot of calories to be expended. So, yeah, if you want to get into the news and some of the price action and some other stuff, that's why it's called Bitcoin and, join me. I'm doing it weekly now, so join me every day, except for Saturday and Sunday. I don't work on weekends.
All right, dude. That's awesome. You've got a little beyond Bitcoin going there too. I like that. People like to hear other topics sometimes. All right, guys. Thanks a lot, guest panel. You rocked as usual. You will all return. This wasn't your first rodeo. All of you are return guests, so it's great to have guys come back like this, and they'll come back again in the future. Everybody out there, you get a new show like this. This Week at Bitcoin is every Friday. The Beyond Bitcoin show is every Saturday. Every other day of the week, you get a new show, the One Bitcoin Show. Who knows what happens? You've got the latest news here. You got all the energy. You're in motion here. So pound that like button. I'm Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Remember, subscribe to the channel, like the video, share this video. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Everybody have a great weekend. Thanks a lot, guest. And we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye, everyone. See ya.